Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting for Tuesday, March 17th. Happy St. Patrick's Day. If I could get everybody's attention, please. We're going to get started. Before we get started, the Village of Anmore would like to open our meeting by recognizing the many Indigenous peoples of our area, including the following First Nations with communities that are now located in the region that we know as Metro Vancouver. They would be the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam. Further, we'd like to honor the important place in history occupied by the many tutorial keepers of these lands and waters around us since time immemorial. Call the meeting to order. Could I get someone to move the agenda approved as circulated? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Public input. Public is allowed to come forward on agenda items only and provide comments. A 2-minute time limit applies to speakers. Anybody want to come forward for public input? No? Okay, we'll move on then to the delegations. We have none. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting held on March 3rd, 2026. Could I get someone to move the recommendation that those minutes be adopted? Second. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Is there any business arising from the minutes? No, see none, okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. I will be pulling item 7.b as I'm in a conflict of interest, but would anybody else like to pull anything else on the consent agenda? No, could I get then someone to move everything other than 7b on the consent agenda? Moved, seconded, any discussion? See none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. I will now recuse myself for
Bear with me again. I didn't run for mayor for a reason.
No, I have to recuse as well.
Sorry, is this is 7G? B. Oh, that one, okay.
Do I? I recuse for everything else. I don't need to?
No, when you're talking about infill process, you have to be on.
Yeah. We're talking about one particular one, so.
Okay. Right. I'll step out. I will step out.
Are you recusing? Okay. Sorry?
Would you like the recommendation?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
The recommendation is that Anmore Zoning Amendment Bylaw 724-2025 be now adopted as recommended in the memo dated March 17th, 2026 from Community Planning and Development Services Department.
Do you have someone to move that? Second? Open it up for discussion. Hang on a sec. Yeah, I know. Sorry. Yeah, 19, right. Okay, so I guess if there's no discussion, nobody has any comments, call the question. All those in favor? Oh, carried unanimously. If we can call everybody back in, that was easy.
Okay, now we'll move on to 9A, OCP update, Provincial Housing Legislation, Regional Context Statement, Metro 2050, bylaw number 726-2025. And I think Mr. Savoy has a bit of a presentation for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a short presentation for council tonight. For those in the audience tonight, my name is Tim Savoy. I'm a planning consultant that's assisted the village in preparing your OCP update. Next slide, please. Josh is going to drive the bus here. I'm going to do the speaking. There we go. Next slide, please. No, I don't need it. As long as it shows on the screen, it's just not showing up there. I'll just speak from my notes. There we go. Next slide, please. Thanks, Josh. So the purpose of the report and presentation tonight is to seek council's direction with respect to draft bylaw 726-2025, as well as the updated regional context statement, section 475 and 476 referrals, and consideration of scheduling a public hearing for April 21st, 2026. The staff report that council has before you includes recommendations on those items. Next slide, please. As council is aware, Bill 44 that was introduced in 2023 shifted long-range planning to a more proactive approach. As such, municipalities were required to update their housing needs reports using a standard methodology, and more actually completed this requirement. In accordance with provincial legislation, once the housing needs report is completed, municipalities must plan for housing, for the housing needs in their official community plan and must have completed their first review and update of the OCP based on the interim housing needs report by December 2025. So this update is actually responding to this requirement. In addition to the above requirements with Bill 44, the Local Government Act also requires that member jurisdictions must prepare a regional context statement within 2 years of the adoption of a regional growth strategy. Metro 2050, the current regional growth strategy, was adopted by the board on February 2023, and therefore the update to Anmore's regional context statement is required. So this also forms part of this amendment. Next slide, please. So a number of proposed changes have been incorporated into the draft OCP with respect to text, policies, and mapping. While the report that actually is part of the agenda generally outlines the changes that have been made to the OCP document, sort of chapter by chapter, the changes can be characterized as a combination of statutory requirements related to planning for housing and regional planning, the inclusion of supporting policy adjustments related to those statutory requirements, as well as a number of housekeeping amendments. So where can you see these changes? So they actually can be seen in 3 different locations in the agenda. The report, as I mentioned, provides a high-level listing of the changes. The red line version of the OCP included in the agenda includes exactly what text we took out and we put in, and bylaw 726-2025 provides the exact wording that council would be considering if you decide to have this go forward. So the province of BC requires a completion of a housing needs report, as mentioned earlier, to assist communities to understand their current and future housing needs. Anmore's housing needs report identifies additional housing supply required to address community needs and identifies gaps in priority groups in need of housing options. So we've included the village's housing needs table in the draft OCP. And as you can see, it's anticipated that Anmore will require 215 units over the next 5 years and 756 combined units over the next 20 years. Municipalities are required to have a regional context statement as of 1996, and these demonstrate how local policies relate to and support the regional growth strategy, in this case, Metro 2050. Anmore's regional context statement was updated in 2019, and as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, it has to be updated because of the adoption of Metro 2050 that occurred in 2023. And as Council knows, the statement must be accepted by the Board of Directors, Metro Board of Directors, following third reading. So if the bylaw proceeds to third reading, once it receives third reading after public hearing, it has to be referred to Metro Vancouver for their consideration. And they have up to 120 days to do that, but they assure me it's not going to take that long. So, as highlighted in the report, we didn't amend the land use vision, the land use plan. We kept the land use designations as they existed because the length of the process and the type of process, it was not a visioning exercise. It was not determining what new land uses the village wanted to pursue. So while the land use designations and locations haven't changed, definitions have been added to the land use chapter to clarify the types of permitted uses in each of your existing land use designations. As well, reference to Anmore's current housing needs report with supporting statements and policies has been added. And you'll also note the addition of requirements for development within hillside areas, as well as a special study area designation. And then lastly, we've adjusted the community amenity contribution language given legislation changes. But these are not all the changes, these are just high-level sort of description of some of the more significant changes. One aspect of the draft that generated probably more discussion than any other part was the density conversation during our open house and after through emails received by the village. And to be clear, so we didn't adjust densities in the plan. What we were trying to reflect is what was currently permitted in the ROCP. And really our goal was to clarify and articulate what was being interpreted and what was being approved at this point in time. So the densities for residential and hillside residential included in the draft are, so for residential, we identified that as lands appropriate for subdivision as before, intended to accommodate detached residential, secondary suites, and coach houses at maximum densities up to 3 units per acre. Hillside residential, we initially, the first draft actually had densities up to 4.5 dwelling units per acre, but following some of the questions we received and with further refinement, we were able to sort of differentiate different densities for different types of uses. So for example, for detached residential uses, in terms of innovative cluster housing, 3 dwelling units per acre for single detached residential uses, up to 3.5 dwelling units per acre for combined development, which has both single-family detached and attached forms of housing, and up to 4.3 dwelling units per acre for a combined development of single-family detached, multifamily attached housing, where single-family dwellings include secondary suites and or coach houses. So we've clarified and refined that. Next slide, please. Schedules were not substantially changed. We did make a few sort of administrative adjustments, took a few things out, but nothing of substance except the parks map and Schedule F, where we included additional parks that form part of Anmore Parks and Parks Master Plan. In addition, we added those lands that the village had received through the development process for this purpose. So that has additional park maps, and that was actually picked up during the consultation phase by some of the residents. So once we've added the statutory, the housing needs assessment, we've talked about how those units would be created. We wanted to provide the community with some assurances as to what would be built. So at the moment, the village has 1 development permit area, and that's with respect to watercourse protection. So we added 3 additional development permit areas, 1 for intensive residential development. That's intended to influence the form and character of single-family detached with a coach house or standalone coach house. And with all these development permits, when you look at the guidelines themselves, there's a number of exemptions for, the intent is not to sort of double down on sort of regulatory means, but rather just to guide development. So there's lots of exemptions for non-building permit items. The intent is that your staff wouldn't be processing these in every instance. Hillside residential guidelines to influence the form and character of those aspects covered in development permit area 1. So you can do, in the hillside area, you can do single family forms with a secondary suite and a coach house, but also to regulate the form and character of semi-detached duplex and townhouse building forms. TP area 3, we called it the protection of the natural environment to be more reflective of the legislation that exists today. And these are guidelines to protect the vital features, functions, and conditions to naturally maintain stream health and productivity and core elements of Anmore's rural character. So we beefed up the guidelines somewhat from what you had before. And lastly, development permit area 4, which is protection of the development from hazardous conditions, and we put steep slopes. And these are guidelines to protect development from hazardous conditions such as flooding, mud flows, debris torrents, landslip, rock falls, or subsidence when associated with deep slopes. So when you look at the draft, you'll see we've added a number of requirements that the development community should respond to when submitting an application in the hillside area. And that actually concludes my presentation, where I know there's probably lots of questions we're happy to answer. Josh will be helping me, and Chris in some instances as well.
I'll open it up to council. I'm sure there is. Councillor Wevering, start us off.
Just a few clarifications on the densities in the different areas. Regarding 4.3 units per acre on the hillside developments, why is that lower than what's allowed on the valley floor? Because essentially, if you have 2 infill lots, you could have 3 units per infill, and you've got 6 units per acre. So I'm just wondering if you want to speak to that.
Through the chair, that's a very, very good question. So we being close to this, we're working through it. We're trying to make sure that we weren't creating difficulty anywhere else, but that's actually a good point. And we have actually some amended wording tonight, if council wants to consider that, to add to RLU, the policy RLU 17, that makes specific reference to that. Because you're right, for an infill development, even though we're talking about the 4.3 and the 3.5, we're talking about more greenfield development, where we're looking at so many units per acre. It won't work for an existing infill situation. So we have added a reference to 6.6? I think so, 6.6 units per acre in the RLU 17 for infill. And we've also added reference, another clarifying reference in there. We can put it up on the screen for council's consideration if council wants to make motions on this tonight.
Okay, so I mean, I know the valley floor is different because not everybody's going to do infill, not every lot qualifies for infill, so the density of the neighborhood itself might be closer to that 4.5 or even less. But it's just something, I don't know if everybody realizes that we have this potential density on any 1 acre lot that's infillable. Yep. I guess the other question, when we talk about density on the hillside, that's incorporating all the green space, like the entire parcel, and that's the average density for the whole parcel.
That's correct. So that would be the gross density.
Right, so which gives us the opportunity to concentrate the development in a smaller footprint.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, I think I've just had that other question answered. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Hopefully these won't come as any surprise. So just to follow up with Councillor Weverink, I believe the Cordovado thing, subdivision, CD zone, is actually like 4.37 or something like that, and that's not on steep slopes. So somehow we either change the map or we change the number to fix that, and I think that's maybe in the writing that's coming.
Absolutely.
I think that's important. I also had the infill aspect. Policy PNTLU-5, like we've had some discussion on, does it align with 510 of the Local Government Act? And I don't believe it does, but there's been some looking at that. Policies RCV 18 and 19, or RLV 18 and 19, and sorry for the people that don't like red ink, they should be in red ink before it goes out for public hearing, because they are changes. And then the last one, which is a little different, my recollection, like this, the OCP is out of date compared to the infill policy that was written and added before. So the original policy was a lot had to be in existence for 10 years, and that got changed to 5 years in the policy. The OCP still says 10 years. So my understanding of the law says you can't have policies and bylaws that contradict the OCP. So my recommendation would be that we change RLU 16 to to 5 years instead of 10 years to make it all align, because we're doing it anyway. So those would be my main comments.
Mr. Savoy.
Through the chair, absolutely 100% correct. So what we've added is another reference for the Cordovato development or like developments, and the densities would be similar to what would be found in the hillside. So a range between 3 and 4.3. So there will be a graduated opportunity to do that on the floor, lower elevations, and as well. And I was wrong with the infill development policy. So we're suggesting that 6 units per acre. So you could still, so it would be consistent with with your infill policy. The reference to the 5 years, absolutely. See, because I was trying not to change that relative to the existing OCP, so we put 10 years in. But certainly, council could make a motion to change it to 5, and we can adjust it.
Okay, so do we make motions now?
I would say if you want, at the end of the deliberation, we can put up some of the suggested wording that we have, and if you want to do it at that time, it'd be great.
Yeah, let's sort of have a general discussion right now about some of the concerns. Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, so very similar to Councillor Wevering, RLU 17 was confusing because of infill allowing essentially 6 units. But how does, you're going to add some language to break that out so that it's clear and understandable?
I wonder if we could put it up. Can we put it up now? Would that be
If
possible?
you could, that'd be great.
Yep, we don't need the presentation anymore.
I have a secondary question, if I may, while we're searching for that. We have some CDs and other zones that have higher density. I'm thinking countryside and AG and stuff like that. Does that need to be framed within the document, or just the go forward stuff?
Absolutely, just to go forward application. So things may be created that are existing non-conforming after the fact. Applications that have been approved that are higher densities. You don't have to go back and readjust those. They'd be existing non-conforming. It's just whatever new application comes forward, it would have to be consistent with this, with the OCP, with the document.
Okay, that leads me to another question. If they're existing non-conforming, which I understand, if there is a total loss situation or something like that, do we then have to adjust that zone to allow someone to rebuild their home, or what do you see as potentials there?
It does happen, but it doesn't happen often, and it's happened, I've seen it before. Most instances when that happens, the municipality will kind of respond to whatever that specific situation is. Often there's a separate process, special process that a municipality will do. Maybe you'll create a CD zone if it's not working. What I've seen is in most instances the municipality will try to facilitate whatever was there to sort of replicate that for people. Typically, it'd be a separate process that you'd have to deal with, more than likely. The legislation allows for specific sort of leeways with that, and I won't quote legislation because I'll be wrong probably, but my recollection is it's probably references that I recall from the past is typically if damage happens and it's 75% or less, unless it's changed recently, then they can typically build back what they had.
Rebuild. Okay.
But what I've seen, most cases, municipalities will work with an owner to make sure they can
Yeah, I asked because we actually have that scenario in another development. We made that change, and we were under the impression that it was, first of all, empathetic and appropriate, but to hear that it's not outside of convention gives me even more confidence, so I appreciate that. I think you're up now.
Okay. So the wording we're showing, if I can see, can we make it bigger?
That's the same wording.
Oh, there we go. So the first question was the Court of Auto example. So this is RLU 17, so we're suggesting you put a similar scale of development densities as with the hillside, between 3 and 4.3, and with the same sort of clarifications in terms of what uses you're going to put there. So for example, the highest density is a combination of both single and multifamily units with secondary suites and coach houses. Now, that's not to say that they can always, someone will be able to achieve that. They might not do, based on lot configuration, lot conditions. And then the second question was the infill question for RLU 16. We're suggesting that density not exceed 6 units per acre.
Okay. Which is what we're doing now, so there's no real change there.
No change. That was really the whole purpose of it. So we really appreciate the questions that came today, because the whole idea was that we don't change anything. It was keeping what you're currently doing and just clarifying what that is.
So redefining exactly what we've already got.
That was the whole intent and purpose, yeah.
That's the end. Thank you.
I just have couple more
go ahead.
things. It's probably not the place for it, but it makes me think about, the 6 units per acre and 1 acre subdivisions in the past when we would create 1 acre subdivisions with no parkland. I hope future councils consider that as we densify those 1 acre developments, that we look at opportunities to possibly acquire land through ACPs or whatever it is, ACCs, so that we have some parkland in those neighborhoods. I always thought that was flawed. Regarding Metro 2050 and the requirement to create a compact urban area, obviously I like the does not apply. So I never thought of that as a response. I've always sort of felt the pressure as a community in Metro to, and I think that was the opportunity to Anmore South. That would have been our compact urban area. Pretty big urban area, which we discovered was not very palatable. But obviously we don't need to do that because we're a semi-rural or rural community.
That's true. So when the way actually Metro has developed an implementation guide as well as sort of an assessment tool that every municipality is using, and it's in this table format. So when you look at the table, all the Metro policies are on the left, and then your response is on the right. So in a lot of cases, when I was completing it, a lot of that is not applicable to Anmore because of your context and because of your regional designation.
Right.
So Metro has reviewed this because council will recall when we sent out the initial 475 referral, one of the organizations was Metro Vancouver. So they have seen it. They provided a response to it. I've actually responded in this draft that's before council. So my view is there's nothing in there that's shocking to Metro because they've already seen it once, and I've responded to the few comments that they had.
Right, and I don't think it was written with Anmore and Belcarra in mind.
No,
So we've always read it and said, well, how does this apply to Anmore? What's the important part and what isn't?
Yeah, and there are, through the chair, there are a number of aspects that are totally relevant to the way you grow and the way that you plan. But there are many that are not, like frequent transit development areas and TODs and those kind of things are just not applicable to Anmore. And the way they've worded in the device, it makes it actually quite easy to say it's not applicable. So there's lots of not applicable in there, but there's lots of policies that are actually connected to Anmore as well.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Richardson?
Yeah, okay, so this amendment doesn't cover the infill
No.
thing, so I have to make another motion for that.
Please, yes, through the chair.
So I like to amend that policy RLU-16, the timeframe of 10 years gets changed to 5 years to bring it in line with the infill policy. I think it's 6 or something, right?
It's
5? Okay.
5 years.
So just for everyone, that's page 467 of the agenda, the amendment under section 31 at the top of your page. So it would have been in existence for at least 5 years of the date of the application instead of 10 is what the suggestion is.
Yes. Does it? Yeah, this is supposed to be 5. I was using this one. Is that clear, Essen? Yes? So I'm making that motion.
Can I get someone to second it? Second it? Any further discussion? I thought it was always 5 years in what we said. Yeah, okay. Okay. Any discussion? See none? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Anything else? Councillor Richardson?
Well, there is the other one that policy PNTLU-5, it has the wording in there, I forget what it is, but it doesn't align with 510 of the current Local Government Act, which, where the heck is that thing? It was, I want policy TL, it's back. Here, 7.5. It's on page 245 in the red line version. So it says, alternatively, the subdivider may be required to provide money in lieu of parkland. I don't believe the municipality can require money in lieu of parkland according to the conditions of it. And I think that's being flagged by other people too. So just take out the required. The subdivider may provide money in lieu in parkland.
Yeah. To the chair, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, that's the old wording, unfortunately. We didn't change it, but perfect. We should check it out. I think it's good. So just remove may be required, or just may provide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I propose that for PNTLU-5, that the word required be removed, so it will become the subdivider may provide money. So you strike out be required to and just may provide.
Someone to second that? Second? Ms. Elrick?
Sorry, through the chair, can you just give us a moment just to find the correct section in the amending bylaw
Okay.
so that we make sure that we're
Changing.
doing that in order as well?
worries.
Thank you.
The amending bylaw, which one's that? This version? Which one are you looking at, Brian? Here. Yeah. Oh, there's so. Oh. Okay. Okay.
It's fine, we just need to take a moment to make sure that.
Okay. I didn't use this one.
Find it for you. Yeah, oh, here it is. I think it's on, no pages on the bylaw here. Number 30, 36 item, it's around 35, 36. It's in that range.
No, this is, I think you're looking at the,
Oh, maybe I'm looking at the old, maybe I'm looking at the old bylaw.
attachment 14 is the new.
Okay.
By the way, this was quite some reading material, Mr. Savoy. Thank you.
I think that might be the record longest bylaw I've done, I think, in terms of the number of items. And through the chair, part of the issue was that we certainly didn't want to, normally for a large document like this, you'll simply replace one document with another. But we didn't want to do that because this is not a full OCP amendment. This is an update. So by completely repealing one bylaw and giving another one, it starts to be a new bylaw number, a new date. 468. So that added to the complexity of the bylaw preparation. And the other stalling tactic I'll say is, one of the other thoughts is that 10 years from now, when someone wants to see what happened, they'll have all the documents in one agenda, as long as it is.
So you'll be around here in 10 years.
Changing, remove the word, so it should read, alternatively, the subdivider may provide, so remove be required to.
So, through the chair, the amendment would be alternatively, the subdivider remove the words may be required to, and then the rest of the sentences provide money in lieu of parkland to the amount of 5% of the value of the land prior to subdivision. So then it would read, alternatively, the subdivider may provide money in lieu of parkland to the amount of 5% of the value of the land prior to subdivision. So the words be required to provide money will be removed under P and TLU 5. Yes? Correct, sorry, may,
Provide money.
alternatively, the subdivider may provide money in lieu of parkland.
Have we got
So
that?
the be required to is removed.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that change has been, you have the change, so it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'll call the vote. All those in favor of that amendment? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Anything else? Yeah, we've already moved, we're moving through them as, any other amendments? Anything? A couple questions I had, actually, my first one is to Essen. Is it possible to separate this motion so that the first part would just deal with Bill 44 requirements and the other one would be OCP amendments? The two are not linked.
That's what I was thinking. We can separate the motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason being, I voted against this previously, the
Okay.
OCP, so I don't want to, Bill 44 is important to move forward in that, but a couple comments. I just wanted to ask Mr. Savoy, can I ask you a question, Mr. Savoy?
Sure, yep,
So
absolutely.
municipalities within a rural designation are only required, so we're at about 38 units a year, is that correct? Totaling up in 20 years to about 760, you said? So of those units, we're now classifying basement suites, carriage houses as units, so those theoretically could be filled with those types of units.
That's true. I think just looking just generally, now this is not market driven. This is just
Units.
theoretical units. You certainly will meet the required number of units
And,
for the
and,
first 5 years.
and it says here that under our current, after preliminary review, it was determined that the current zoning, with this taken in place, easily meets our housing needs report, can be determined under current zoning regulations.
That's right. You won't have to do an amendment because a lot of municipalities will have to amend their zoning bylaw to match the OCP.
Every
Act.
basement suite that gets added, every carriage suite that gets added goes towards those units.
Absolutely.
Okay. Again, thank you for the detailed report. It was a lot of reading. A couple things I just wanted to clarify. In the report, and I don't think you make the comment that council has approved this. I think it's important to note the majority of council has approved this. I have not, if that's correct. And then a couple other questions. Now, I'm going to stay sort of at the high level in regards to, when we drafted the OCP in 2014, which we're interpreting right now, and I agree that it's a pretty loosely worded argument, and it's being interpreted much differently than how it was written. And I can tell you at the time when it was written, I've said very publicly, we actually removed duplexes because the community didn't want them. So that was the type of housing, and now we're talking about townhouses and townhomes and the such. So when we talk about, I guess, the most recent, the recent application, which was the Cordovato at 4.3, so theoretically, according to the interpretation of the OCP currently, that could be all townhomes then at 4.3?
Maybe I'll defer to Josh for that one in terms of, because typically the way you would apply it. I think, well, I'll let Josh answer.
Thank you, Mayor Cubian. Yeah, so it'll be subject to, of course, a rezoning if you were to apply kind of the amendments. Sorry, it'd be subject to a rezoning, just like any other property in the village.
Like we're experiencing on the hillside right now.
Yeah,
Same
subject
thing.
to a rezoning.
Okay.
Yeah. And are you speaking to the current clarification updates right now?
Sorry?
Speaking to the current clarification updates?
Yeah, just in regards to when you put up the Cordovato at 4.3, I just wanted to reference that to be able to get
Yeah, so that would also include the land use types as with the hillside. Yeah.
One of the things that I did pull up regarding infill, because we are talking about this in a little bit. One of the recommendations on infill, or the preface that made the selection about infill, was frontage of streets. I think actually Councillor Weberink and Trowbridge were actually on the committee, and they really referenced Ravenswood and used the frontage and stuff like that. As well, in the infill, there's a limitation on grade, which is 15%. Is that correct?
So I think you're talking about the infill policy.
Yeah.
So this, I haven't really worked on that, but if Josh, but maybe before, if you don't mind, just to talk about the residential designation. So the way the OCP is worded now, so residential designation, hillside designation.
Well, hold I just have to correct you on it. The way it's currently worded, or the way that you're proposing?
The way that, well, actually the way that your current OCP actually talks about it, because you right now in your OCP, you have a residential designation and a hillside residential designation. So what we did is we tried to determine what the village has essentially permitted through, your current OCP interpretation over the years. And therefore, with the residential, that would be, I think that's the Cordovato one. I think it's not hillside, right? That would be single family with secondary suite and a coach house. I don't think the OCP, based on sort of my interpretation of what I'm doing, wouldn't permit multifamily form at this point. Hillside designated properties would. They would let single family development happen or townhouses. But my interpretation of this, and of course when I'm gone, which won't be long, hopefully not from this earth, but Josh will be interpreting sort of what that is. But
well, the reason I reference that as well is when you look at the updated maps, half of that territory is in hillside.
Right.
According to the, so I guess it could be.
So if the map's showing hillside, I don't have it in front of me here, you're right. It could be a townhouse or could be a triplex or whatever.
Yeah, okay, so the Cordovato, just so for reference in that, theoretically, because it being identified in here on a hillside. Now, one of the things with the infill that was really important is that gentle density went to the valley floor because that's where services were and the most affordable place to put that. So I'm just wondering, is some of this not contradicting in the OCP that we're moving some of that intense development, clustering, away from where the existing infrastructure is?
So through the chair again, so in terms of determining what densities we were going to put in there, essentially what we used is council's previous direction. So I did highlight sort of what council had determined regarding one specific project in town, and that's what we based our hillside density on. Simply, we don't have any other measure. If council didn't require an OCP amendment for the Pinnacle Ridge project, therefore, the next sort of indication would be that that's consistent with the OCP, because if council would have felt that that project was not consistent with the OCP, you would have required an OCP amendment,
Well,
which didn't happen.
Interestingly enough, when I think it was 2018, it required, the initial proposal didn't require an OCP amendment, but when this proposal came forward, the applicant itself said it needed an OCP amendment, which I think was corrected by Mr. Boyd. So, and again, I didn't accept that analysis at the time, but a couple more questions I had for you.
While you're looking, can I ask a clarification?
Sure.
So just to be clear, townhomes may be allowed on the hillside, but for each individual parcel, it would have to be a rezoning to allow them, so it would come from council, right? So what I'm trying to say is, just because it's that thing's word is there, it doesn't mean carte blanche townhomes all over the hillside.
Absolutely correct, yeah, through the chair. So the OCP is setting the vision, setting the direction, and then council would have to consider rezoning applications on a case-by-case basis, and there is no obligation to approve these rezoning applications depending on the specific circumstances.
Yeah, and I realize that, the OCP doesn't specify townhomes, doesn't specify condos. It also doesn't specify towers, theoretically. And that's where it's missing some teeth. So, it's interesting. I read through the Lucent Quay Consulting, and I receive a lot of correspondence from residents. And this is very confusing how all of a sudden a development, and I'll use Bellaterra, for example, which was one of our first ones approved, and it was at a 1.2 units per acre. And now theoretically, by this the new formula that we're calculating, it could be probably closer to 4 units per acre with a carriage house and a suite and that. So this is it's a big step for people here to understand this new interpretation, clearly identified in the Lucent Quay report as when people got up and was asking questions. So unfortunately, I won't be supporting the OCP. I think there needs to be a bigger discussion regarding what sort of houses the community wants to see. And I think that especially after what we've experienced over the last year, and how engaged this community was and how diligent they were regarding remaining a rural context. I think it's interesting, so that's why I asked for separation. I certainly approve the Bill 44, but I will not be supporting that at this point. Ms. Elrod.
Thank you. Through the chair, so in terms of the separation, staff is just seeking clarification. When you say separate the requirements from Bill 44, as opposed to the other suggested amendments. Is that what you're speaking of in terms of separating, or separating the actual motions that are included in the agenda?
Just separating out the Bill 44 requirements, which I've been told are the housing needs assessment, the addition of basement suites, and and then the housing needs assessment.
Thank you. So in order to do that, staff would need to be provided direction to come back with a new bylaw specifying only the legislative requirements. We would not be able to do that this evening.
Okay. Well, as long as it's, I'm fine, as long as it's noted, I'm totally fine with the legislative requirements. It's the other that I have an issue with. So, Councillor Trowbridge.
Thanks. Just a bit of clarification, if I may, too. I had the same point as Councillor Richardson, but I have another point that I'd like to make. When we're making a comment about creating more clustering or density away from existing infrastructure, you can't really draw a conclusion or a connection even between that and infill. Infill is in existing neighborhoods, and we put that clause in to make sure that they didn't require additional infrastructure, because with infill, there would be no payback. In the clustering that we're referring to, we need that in order to make it, we'll call it cash flow positive, to pay for the infrastructure so it doesn't burden existing taxpayers. So in my mind, it's a very intelligent way for any development to proceed. Do you see it that way?
Through the chair. And I think the cluster references certainly gives the village some flexibility in terms of working around specific geographic conditions, or even, like you say, even dealing with your types of housing that you are trying to achieve that are different. There's, Josh pointed out one thing, and we had a lot of conversations about this, and policy S7, which I think is what we're talking about, that contemplates different housing besides single family. Clearly it does. Unfortunately, it was not that clear than the higher number. What is the number? How many? What type of units? So we're hoping that this provides a little clarity around that conversation. If council decides to cluster development in the future, well, then maybe you could do clustered single family, or you could do clustered duplex or clustered triplex. It gives you more flexibility, and it's clear for staff. The problem that you find is if you're not clear with your OCP, as staff change over the years and people are coming in, you're not getting consistent interpretations. So
Yeah.
the clearer you could be at the onset as staff.
Definitely what we've suffered.
And it makes total sense, but the hammer is still held at zoning anyway.
Absolutely.
So it's not like any of this gives carte blanche and all of a sudden, I want to make sure the public doesn't have the sense that all of a sudden this is going to approve townhomes all over Anmore. That's simply not true.
Absolutely not. That you're absolutely correct, through the chair. So, and also legislation is specific about the fact that a municipality is not required to proceed with anything in this plan at any point. The only thing that has to happen is once an OCP is adopted, is all bylaws enacted after the adoption of the OCP has to be consistent with the OCP. But it does not require that that the municipality, just allow a number of townhouses. Council will have that ability in a case-by-case basis. In fact, I've added policy in here that says, as council's considering these applications, what you may want to do, because of course we didn't touch the growth management chapter because we didn't feel that was within scope. You would be asking developers on a case-by-case basis to look at the population estimates. What is that? What kind of burden on the village is that going to pose? Where are you going to land in terms of your overall population numbers? And you can do that on a case-by-case basis. And I added that as a policy in the plan.
Good.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Councillor Webber.
Yeah, to Councillor Trowbridge's point, I mean, it already is in our OCP to be financially sustainable for all these developments. And, what I would approve on the Cordovado property is not the same as what I might approve as a councillor on the hillside. I have to look at the circumstances. I'd have to look at the financial sustainability was not looked at in the past. We built on the hillsides, never used to build in the hillside because the land wasn't valuable enough to justify putting in a subdivision. Well, that changed, and we know that. We've got good information on that. So, we have to change. We have to adapt to the future. And I mean, we're not here to debate the hillside, but I'm glad that the opportunity exists for us to look at options on the hillside that make more sense than what we've been building in the past. And if we're not exceeding the density and we're actually lower density than some areas on the valley floor, I don't know why we wouldn't look at alternate housing forms that are more efficient and give us a better tax base and, cease putting the burden on the existing residents for future development. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
Councillor Richardson.
Just-
and then we'll get a motion on the floor.
Okay, just to make the point maybe stronger, the current OCP strongly encourages cluster housing on the hillside. Like, it wasn't limited to the bottom or anything like that. It's in order for, as Council Reverend just said, to make it more practical from a village point of view on infrastructure. So that hasn't changed. It's still strongly encouraged, and it was strongly encouraged before.
So can we get a motion? We'll put the prescribed motion then on the floor. Is that all right?
Thank you. Through the chair. So I do have the motion that Anmore Official Community Plan Bylaw Amendment 726, 2025 be given first reading as amended to include on page 467 of the agenda, under section 31, to change the 10-year to 5 years. Second amendment, page 468 of the agenda, to remove the words under P and TLU 5, to remove the words "to be required to." And lastly, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's I think 467 is the page for the 10 to 5. I'm not sure it matters. It's still the same spirit, but
Correct. 467 is the 10 to 5, correct?
yeah.
And then 468, under section 4, we would be adding P and TLU 5, remove the words "be required to." Then lastly, the amendment under section 32 to add under PLU, under RLU 17 in section 32, to add for lands designated as residential and hillside residential when being considered for comprehensive development zoning with conditions established in RLU 8, the maximum gross density shall not exceed, and I think, Josh, you can bring that up if everybody wants to see it. The bullets are 3 dwelling units per acre for single-family detached residential, up to 3.5 dwelling units per acre for the combined development of single-family detached and multifamily attached housing, and up to 4.3 units per acre for the combined development of single-family detached units with secondary suites and/or coach houses, duplexes, and townhouses, for lands being considered for infill development with conditions established through RLU 16, the maximum gross density shall not exceed 6 units per acre, and that Village of Anmore Official Community Plan Bylaw Amendment 726, 2025 be given second reading as amended.
So we're giving it first and second reading at this point?
Correct.
Okay. Could I get someone to move that? Moved and seconded. Any further comments? I'll just make one final comment regarding to what Councillor Richardson said, and that is that the original OCP was very specific on what our housing stock was, which was single-family housing here. So I grant the OCP does not reference anything different, but that was what the intent was. So on that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? I will be opposed, and I'd like my recorded, please. Thanks.
And then through the chair, we do have the additional recommendations I can go through as well.
Sure.
So that in relation to the Village of Anmore Official Community Plan Bylaw Amendment number 726, 2025, amendments associated with provincial housing legislation changes, as well as updates to the regional context statement associated with the adoption of Metro 2050 in 2023, Council will provide the following additional opportunity it considers appropriate for consultation with persons, organizations, or authorities it considers will be affected, including the municipalities of Belcarra and Port Moody, School District 43, affected First Nations being Musqueam, Coquitlam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, TransLink, the Greater Vancouver Regional District, Metro Vancouver, Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, Fraser Health, BC Ambulance, and RCMP, that all information resulting in the Section 475 and 476 referrals be received by the village will be forwarded to council as part of the public hearing package, that the engagement summary dated March 9th, 2026, prepared by Lucent Key Consulting be received, that a public hearing be scheduled for April 21st, 2026, and that all property owners and occupants in the village be notified of the public hearing.
Good. Could I get someone to move that? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? I'll be opposed and recorded, please. Okay, thank you, Mr. Savoy. And Josh as well, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to 9B, the participating area approval for Metro Vancouver Regional District loan authorization, Saskatchewan Fall Fire Hall replacement funding. This is just about when we borrow funds, Metro Vancouver is borrowing funds on our behalf through Municipal Finance Authority because we get such a favorable rate on it. There's only 2 submissions a year. That's why this has been put at a high thing. In essence, this is a line of credit that will be used to facilitate both of the fire halls. So we just need to authorize this by the council before it goes to the inspector of municipalities before we move forward. So I think the recommended resolution is that the Council of Village Anmore consent on behalf of the electors to the adoption of Metro Vancouver Regional District Loan Authorization Bylaw number 1443, 2026. Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Richardson.
Yeah, so this is mostly coming from the trustees in Metro Vancouver. And when I look at it, I don't actually understand in some ways how this works. The fire halls will be built as a Metro Vancouver project, is my understanding. And when I read the bylaws, what I read is Metro Vancouver is going to potentially borrow the money. We're signing off on paying it back, but we have no future say from a council perspective on what anything looks like. In fact, we're giving authorization to Metro Vancouver to actually start building this thing today if they want to. Like, this is what I read, and I don't know if it's true. So the first question is, like, it skips all the loaning requirements and public consent or the electric consent. So they borrow the money, and then they just, the way the volunteer fire department works now, they just send us a levy every year and we pay it. So that would be the same thing that would happen here. And then I have lots of concerns because, you know, $22 million is a whack.
Can I just answer the first question?
Sure.
So Metro Vancouver administers the department on our behalf.
Yes.
The Saskatchewan Volunteer Department. It's owned equally between Anmore
Yes.
and Belcarra. So they administer it. We pay them a fee for administering it.
Yes.
They are taking the loan out on the Saskatchewan Volunteers' behalf because the other municipality might not have adequate funding to be able to secure that loan.
But who builds the fire hall? It's not Anmore.
Both of them will be in tax requisitions to both municipalities equally.
Yeah, through Metro Vancouver.
Metro Vancouver will give a tax requisition. Yeah, it's on our taxes already
Right,
right
but
now.
Anmore's not actually building the fire halls. Metro Vancouver's building the fire halls.
You're right.
Right? So
For our behalf.
on our behalf, I understand it's on our behalf, but we have no say in what they do.
We have
yes.
all this say. As the trustees, we
Okay.
still.
Okay, I'm talking as a council member. Council has no say. The trustees have say. 3 members of council are trustees, but we can't say it's, as a council, it's too expensive if the trustees have said, no, it's fine. And we've authorized Metro Vancouver to this amount, and they don't have to reduce it as far as I can tell by reading the actual words of the bylaw. They can build these things as is, as specified in the bylaw, as attached.
All the trustees have to approve the budget, so there is still financial control with the trustees, which is 6 council members.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
And a chair.
And a chair. So it isn't that loosey-goosey as it seems to read.
Okay, but the budget, there is a budget in there, and we're in some ways approving the budget.
That's only a proposal. That's what I said. This money is only a line of credit portion. We don't have a defined budget because we don't have a defined scope of the 2 projects yet.
Correct.
Okay? And then the last part that I have on this is it's gone from, and I started with Bowen Island, because I remember 4 years ago or whatever it was, the group from here went and visited Bowen Island, and you came back and said it was perfect. Jay Sharp said it was perfect, copy Bowen Island and put it here. So Bowen Island was $3.75 million, and it's roughly 9,500 square feet, 6 bays, as well as, you know, the proposal here. And that's to service roughly 2,000 households. Between Anmore and Belcarra, we want 18,000 square feet to support half the number of households. So it's 4 times what's required for Bowen Island. So, you know, I don't care about 1.5, 1.2, that kind of stuff makes no sense, but a factor of 4 is a huge thing. Like, I don't see how you go from 3.75 million to 13 million for one hall.
So just, we take none of us have ever built fire halls before, so we're going to be basing it on what the fire chief and deputy fire chiefs have suggested. Number 2 is, we're actually, the person that gave the first presentation was the same company that built that. We actually want to use them because they are so cost effective. So hopefully they come in at prices in that area. But the fire chief is the one that's dictated what each village needs, and that's what we're going to be going with.
I have seen no report from the fire chief on a needs assessment. I've seen the Johnson-Davidson report from 2019, but I haven't seen anything current. And here's the last problem I have. Like, we are going to build $1 million facility in the works yard, which will temporarily house the fire department for probably 2 years, roughly. I'm assuming it's 2 years construction. If that building is good enough for the fire department for 2 years, I can't see how you have to add $12 million to it to make it good for a long time.
Through the chair, you can't make any comparison that the fire hall has to be post-disaster. The building that is temporary, probably only for a year, but that building doesn't meet any of the specifications. All it does is provide a concrete platform and temperature control, which is mandatory to keep the fire trucks moving for, to protect us. But you cannot draw a straight line between the temporary housing and the finished hall. They're vastly different. We are exploring the IPD program. We are working with the people who built Bowen, but our requirements are different than theirs because of our geography. They can have one hall, for example, and as you mentioned, a couple thousand people. Because of distances, we have to have 2.
No, I understand the 2. I understand the 2.
So there's a doubling of, and I don't think they brought it in on budget anyway at the end.
It was 4 point, I
Yeah,
think it came in
something
about
like that.
4.5.
But you just can't draw that comparison. It's not valid.
It was also about 8 years ago as well, when that was 6 to 8 years, yeah.
2019 it was done. But anyway, I get worried when I see huge numbers with Metro Vancouver involved. I'm feeling a little bit like we could end up like North Van with a sewage treatment plant that's a bit out of whack. And
There's a significant legal component. You can't compare the two
okay,
to that
but
aspect.
I'm just saying this makes me really, really uncomfortable, and I would like to see like Jay Sharp should come in and say, no, this is perfect. This is what we need. Sorry,
More than welcome to attend the meetings where he has said that, what the requirements are.
Okay, I understand I can go to the trustee meetings, but this is council, and the public is, we represent the public. Like, council should do it, not have council members go to the fire trustee meetings. We should do, like, to me, we should do it in front of the people as a council meeting.
And I imagine when we get something tangible, it will be coming back here to what we need. I think the big debate that we're going to be having with both of the fire halls is the challenge of volunteers. And do we want to pay extra to have accommodations on there? I think that's going to be a big discussion. Chief Sharp has told me that could reduce our turnout, time in half from 12 minutes down to 6 minutes. Well, that's significant. If we have people there, remember, these are volunteers. So I think it's important that we get a facility as well as Councillor Trover just says regarding post-disaster. Right now, we don't even have that. So.
And to be fair, every single meeting's been public and well attended by residents from Belcarra, less so from Anmore residents, but there has been nothing in camera on this. The entire process has been public, and the public can go to every meeting. I don't, however, disagree with you that it's a good idea for us to bring information back to council. That makes sense to me. I wouldn't argue that. But I just want to make sure we don't have the impression that this was done in isolation in the dark and
No, I'll say that too. The meetings are open. I completely get it.
Yeah.
But, you know, how many meetings should the public go to have an understanding which is a council decision? And I think, you know, council's council, and it should be ultimately.
Yeah, and I'll stress again before Councillor Carr wants to say something, you know, anybody in the public that has any concerns, please reach out to me. I'll gladly meet with you and go through the whole process. I spent actually quite a bit of time talking with residents from Anmore as well as Belcarra, meeting with them about the share of the capital costs and explaining that whole scenario as regarding the two communities. So, Councillor Carr.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up, Councillor Richardson, because it was a big number. And I recognize that this has been going on for quite some time, and we do have 2 fire halls to build, and the safety of our community is by far the most important thing when we're sitting at this table. So I appreciate your explanation, Councillor Trowbridge and Mayor McEwen. It does make more sense, and I'm relieved to hear that we will have more information forthcoming, and I also would support having Chief Sharp come in and maybe do a presentation or offer us some information. And I know we can come to the meetings, but I have enough meetings in my life. So I think, again, it would benefit the public that are here and watching on YouTube.
Good. Councillor Webering, before we put the motion on the floor.
Yeah, through the chair, I understand maybe your concern about the structure, Councillor Richardson, about maybe taxation without the full participation of council, which is how it appears. And maybe I have some concerns regarding the structure as well. But as far as the building of the fire hall, you know, the budget is a ceiling. It's an allowance. There's no intention to use all that money up. There should be no reason to. I'm going to trust that, you know, Metrovan knows how to build a fire hall and they know what's required, and Chief Sharp is consulting with them and knows what he needs as far as the chief of the fire department. So I don't want to interfere with that too much. I'm not a professional in building fire halls, but I do know that this community needs the best. I can tell you firsthand how good our fire department is, and there's a fellow sitting right there that pretty much saved my life a few years ago. So I want to give these guys everything they deserve, and it costs what it costs. And I know we're going to do our due diligence to bring all the costs down, but we're not going to compromise on service. This community is worth it.
Good, okay. The recommendation resolution is that Council Village of Anmore consent on behalf of the electors of the adoption of the Metro Vancouver Regional District Loan Authorization Bylaw number 1443-2026. Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll now move on to 11A, request for funds for the Saskatchewan Volunteer Fire Department Volunteer Appreciation Dinner. Ms. Elric.
Thank you. So we received a letter of request for a contribution of $500 towards the Volunteer Appreciation Dinner that the SVFD Association puts on every year for their volunteer members. The past few years, Council has contributed $500 as well as Belcarra. So if Council wishes to do so again this year, the recommendation would be that a $500 contribution be provided to the Saskatchewan Firefighters Association towards the Volunteer Appreciation Dinner.
Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll move on to 11B, Bear Smart, first step implementation cost estimates. Report dated March 13th from our bylaw enforcement officer. Ms. Elric.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen and Council Norris.
Sorry,
I'll be
Josh.
presenting on behalf of the bylaw enforcement officer.
Can you pull the mic closer?
Yep. Yeah, so this report on behalf of the bylaw enforcement officer regarding the Bear Smart first step implementation and cost estimate of solid waste violations comes after a motion by council on the March 18th, 2025 regular council meeting, where the direction was to research the cost for a Bear Smart hazard assessment on the goal of becoming a Bear Smart community and report back on bylaw enforcement warnings issued and other relevant data pertaining to bear activity in the village. So regarding the warnings, throughout the year 2025, the bylaw enforcement officer issued around 66 total warnings to residents for solid waste violations that were found, as well, primarily just to do with residents placing waste collection carts curbside outside of the allowable hours as per the bylaw. Furthermore, 3 educational letters were sent to residents on the topic of Bear Smart awareness in regards to the bylaw, and 5 tickets were issued to repeated offenders in this regard. In regards to Bear Smart Community First Step cost estimates, so the staff have reached out to Bear Smart representatives on the matter, which provided a range of around $15,000 to $20,000 for a Bear Smart hazard assessment for the community. So of course, this could range based on various scopes, including community size and other factors. But by comparison, in 2019, the City of Port Moody budgeted around $20,000 for a similar assessment. In addition, there's also several options for grants in regards to the bear hazard assessments, and that's listed in the attachment at the end of the report there. So I do have an option here that the report dated March 13th, 2026 from the bylaw enforcement officer be received for information. Council may wish to provide further direction if wish.
Okay, can
Thanks.
I get someone to move receipt? Moved, seconded, any discussion? See none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Mayor's report, just got a couple things. Recent rainfall, driving through the village, I can't tell you how great it is that the village, we do so much maintenance throughout the off-season so that ensuring our drainage system functions so well. With all the rain that we've received, it's actually functioned incredibly well. A lot of the lower lying cities in Port Coquitlam and Port Moody, I know have had experienced some flooding as well as Burnaby. I was, March 13th, I attended the Tri-City MLA Roundtable about the provincial budget and the challenges that lay ahead. I guess one of the big issues that we're going to be facing here is the increase in PST on a lot of our professional services that the village pays, but this is also going to be passed on to building, and it will increase construction costs. A lot of people were very upset about this. And then my last thing is that we have Easter, will be here on Saturday, April the 4th, the Village Hub. I believe it's from 12 till 2. Is that what it is? Yeah. So you can sign up in that. It's usually a pretty fun event. Usually the weather holds tight. So that's all I have right now. Councilor's report. Okay, Chief Administrator Officer's report.
Thank you. Just wanted to add that we have our Community Spirit Award nominations out right now. That's open for nominations until April 10th. And while we used to award the Community Spirit Award at Ma Murray Day, we are switching over to doing that at our Volunteer Appreciation Night, which is usually held at the end of April. So please look for the nominations or send an email off to village.hall if there's somebody that you think is deserving in the community for this award. And lastly, staff will be undertaking water main flushing from March 23rd to April 2nd. So you may notice some discoloration in your water during that time. If that happens, just run it for 15 minutes and the water is still safe. It just may be slightly discolored, I guess. That's it for me. Thanks.
Councillor Cryer.
Apologies, I forgot. I wanted to remind everyone that we're doing our brain health awareness event on Monday, March 31st. It's from 10 until noon. You do not have to pre-register. There is a poster and further information on our website if you want to check that out. But we're looking forward to welcoming Belcarra and Anmore residents, and I have not confirmed if I can get the City of Port Moody to perhaps bring a shuttle with some seniors, but I'll keep everyone posted on that.
Good, thank you. Okay, I'll move on to public question period. Public is permitted to ask questions to council regarding any item pertaining to village business. Time limit to speakers, and I think we have 20 minutes. Anybody would like to get up? If you could just leave your name and address.
Good evening. Ramy Capel, 1017 Ravenswood Drive. Mr. Weaverick made a comment about financial viability by doing cluster housing. So what I've observed, and my friends in throughout Metro Vancouver's, particularly Vancouver, where there's been incredible density in the last decade, and yet their property taxes continue to go up greater than inflation. So my question is, on Hillside, how does cluster housing make it financially viable to us, the citizens of the village?
Through the chair, it would be based on an evaluation of the financial sustainability of that particular development, which is a report that will come to council and will be vetted by staff. So that's one of the things I'd be looking at before I consider approving any development. So to speak to your question about Vancouver, Vancouver provides a lot more services than Anmore does as far as recreation, parks, and you're absolutely right.
There's issues with parks. The community centers are deteriorating. The pools are failing or becoming non-existent. So, you know, I mean, obviously we can't compare the two communities, but
Right.
But we can use Burnaby as an example. Poco's a bit of an exception, but being one of the taxpayers in Poco, I think, is because they have so much commercial property. So,
awesome.
yeah, I look forward to seeing that. And my thought, again, being a bit cynical, not making accusations to our council here, but the more funding that comes into a community, the more ways we find to spend it. So I'm not buying this logic about.
I mean, I don't want to get into a debate because it's not
know.
appropriate.
That's just
but
me
we
as a
know that
personal,
the
cynical taxpayer seeing what's happening throughout Metro Vancouver. You know, we talk about the fire hall, Patella Bridge, cost overruns, sewage treatment plant, cost overruns. That's why we're concerned, you know, about going forward with major projects.
Yep.
Thank you.
Noted. Thank you.
Any other public question periods before we adjourn? Name and address, please.
Paul Ray, 1700 East Road. My concerns are, again, for the third time, about the amount of effluent that's going to come down this hill. Now, I've invited all of you up to see this for yourself. The water table is saturated. There is no way in the world that any septic field will deliver water into the ground at this point in time between October and April. I did send videos in 3 emails to show you that, in fact, the environmental report provided by the developer, I assume, is actually flawed, because it doesn't admit that there's water flow coming from point A to point B to point C, all the way down to East Road. I was in contact with the people at Mossam Creek Hatchery. They said at that point, all of that water goes into the hatchery catchment area. So, what are we left with here? How are we going to deal with this? You've got high density cluster housing on a slope that can't absorb any water. I mean, why don't we just put it on sewer? What's the answer there? Can we?
Unfortunately, we can't.
Why not?
Well, we would have to change the designation of the village, and the whole village would have to go.
Why couldn't we do that?
It would require an OCP amendment as well.
Okay. So it gets down to investment. Does it?
Sorry,
It gets down to investment. Can't afford it? The developer won't pony up for it? What's the answer here? This water's just going to come down the hill, it's going to swamp.
Time, can I,
Just noticing the time.
time is up, but
Yeah.
may I make a comment on the?
Sure.
Yeah. The relative to the sewer connection, the entire village would have to sign up to the GVS and DD, which would mean all of the taxpayers would have to pay an annual growth levy. It's something that we fought very hard against for the AGE development to be able to connect, so that people who were not benefiting would not be paying for the AGE. So that's your answer to that.
Okay, I get that. So, in other words, we've got a development here Okay. If you haven't seen the videos, I'll give you my business card. Anyone here? And I'd encourage you to contact me and I'll send you verse and clause about all of this. And I would like a response from you guys too. Why haven't you come up and had a
Thank you,
look for
sir.
yourselves?
Thank you.
Ben Lowen, 1722 East Road. A couple questions we'll run through similar to last time, and a couple new ones, and we'll echo my colleague Paul was saying here too. First one, have you confirmed if you've received any detailed modeling from Port Moody for the development of Pinnacle Ridge? Question number one. I'll ask all my questions and we can dialogue after,
Okay.
just as time's limited. When do you expect to provide comments to the responses from Burrard Inlet, Enhanced Society, Sasamet Fire Department, City of Port Moody in the February 3rd regular council meeting comments? Have you been in contact with Port Moody when their modeling will be finished? When regarding the growth, like from the OCP here, when I would recommend that we limit the type of units that are allowed on these, previously it was not allowing duplex, but now technically in a large parcel you could build a high rise as long as you have enough open space. I would move that we would recommend to limit the type, be specific about the type of units. So whether we are allowing townhouses, be specific about it or not, be very specific. Regarding item 9A in attachment 6, where it says that water analysis may be required for any significant development, which would, the hillside would be part of that. I recommend that we change that to be required. Is there a reason why it only be may instead of required to give them an out there? Last one here. Obviously, we can't maybe there's a number of impacts why we can't have sewer services and why we're on septic. But maybe that's a reason why we don't have some of these bigger developments on the hillside, because you can't actually accommodate them because of the runoff is so significant. So I can run through those questions again if you need to.
If you could email me those questions in bullet form.
Yeah, these have already been provided. These are not technical, and so I just was seeing
Okay.
what we could have answered tonight from council.
I don't think we'll get any answers tonight, but if you can provide me those questions that you were answered, I'll get back to you.
Do you have any comments on if you have received from Port Moody the stuff that was provided over a month ago? Has council provided any
I don't
comment?
believe council has received anything. I personally have not, no.
You haven't provided any comments back to the city of Port Moody?
We
or
wouldn't,
fire?
it would be a staff thing that would reply with
Has
comments.
staff provided any comments back or in response?
I'll have to get back to you.
Time.
Yeah. Sorry, any other answers to the questions that were asked?
Thank you. So if you could just send me that, an email with that to all accounts.
Sorry, I was just seeing if you had any answers to the questions. We have 2 minutes to ask the questions, and I was just curious if you had any answers.
They're pretty technical questions, and they would have been to staff regarding the water and those other things. I'm not sure, but I will follow up if you send me that.
Oh yeah. So just to clarify, you have not been in correspondence?
Send it to all of us.
Yeah.
if you would.
Okay. This is. I was just asking.
That'd be great.
Just
Thank
wanted
you.
to clarify.
Yeah.
You have not received any. You've not provided any comments.
I
from
have
that
not.
February
no,
3rd.
No.
None. Okay. Interesting. Do you intend to?
I'll find out. Okay. Good. Thanks.
All right.
Any other questions before we adjourn?
Jurgen Durkton, 1815 A East Road. I just have a question of clarification, and I'd like to direct it, if I may, through the chair to Councillor Richardson and Councillor Trowbridge. I wasn't clear, and it was also with Mr. Savoy. I wasn't clear on the argument or the case said very quickly by Councillor Richardson as to why townhomes aren't necessarily going to be flooding the hillside, so to speak. I was just wondering if you could clarify that.
Because each development proposal has to go through zoning and a zoning change specific for that zone. So like, for example, if you read the zoning bylaw today, each comprehensive development has a separate section which specifies the housing type, what's allowed, the floor area ratio and everything. And my understanding is, and they could correct it or if I'm wrong, that for each CD development, which would, if you wanted to do that kind of density, would require a separate zone for each of those places. And it would be up to council to say, yes, we want that, or we don't want that.
Thank you.
Yep, okay, good. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved, second, all those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming out and braving the weather.